Hi, you're listening to the Professional Speaks podcast with me, Craig McKellar, your host. As an ex-Big Four auditor for 6 years, I now run a specialist recruitment consultancy called McKellar Consulting. Throughout this podcast, I speak to senior leaders from the professional services community, past, present and future. These leaders work in accounting and finance, audit, tax, corporate finance, consulting, legal and investments. In the comfort of their own office, I will be posing questions to our guests to gain insights from them across a variety of topics, including balancing work and life, mental health and mindset, risk-taking, and effective leadership. These insights will help us learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what we want to achieve in our careers. Here's what's coming up on today's episode.
I do think the kind of biggest influences to how I've got here and how I'm able to do my role successfully is the people that I have had, be it as line managers, leaders, mentors, because they have been the ones that have challenged my thinking. I'm quite a strong-minded or stubborn individual, and sometimes I need to get that push and that challenge to say, well, actually, why are you thinking that?
Today I am joined by Karen McBride, who discusses her career which led to becoming an audit director in practice before moving on to a head of finance role. She also discusses her experiences working on international secondments to New York and New Zealand and talks about her time as a financial controller before moving back into audit. Topics covered include developing soft skills, taking risks and mentorship. So Karen, thank you very much for taking part in this new podcast series. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
No, of course. I know we've known each other for a few years, but I thought you'd be a really interesting guest because you've had a lot of different experiences in your career, from working in professional services to working in industry and even working overseas. So I was thinking about asking you to go through your career, but we haven't got too long in this podcast. But I did think I would summarise just for the listeners and viewers as well. So you started off your career as a trainee accountant working in audit, where you spent 9 years in total working for 3 practice firms, all in audit, progressing up to audit manager. And this 9-year period included a 6-month secondment working in New York and a 7-month experience working in Christchurch, New Zealand. Once you had been an audit manager in Glasgow for almost 2 years at a large independent firm, you moved into industry to be a financial controller for a salmon farming business. But after a year, you returned to practice as an audit manager, where you progressed up to senior manager in a role that was then split between external audit and operations, making it to director before moving to Social Investment Scotland, where you are now as head of finance and operations. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Firstly, can you tell listeners and viewers, so what do you do in your current role then?
Yeah, so I'm currently head of finance and operations at Social Investment Scotland. So Social Investment Scotland is a third sector social enterprise whose mission is really to connect capital with the communities. So we do that through debt lending to social enterprises, and also through one of our subsidiaries, Assist Ventures, that provides equity investment to mission-led profit-making organisations. Great. So very much purpose is at the heart of Social Investment Scotland. My role as head of finance and operations is very much about working with the CEO, really to ensure the long-term sustainability of Social Investment Scotland, because without the long-term sustainability, we can't continue to make impact. So that's really a bit about SIS and my role. Great,
no, thanks for that. And kind of, I guess, going forward, I think given the different experiences you've had, I was thinking maybe it's good to start off with talking about kind of risk taking, and your appetite to risk as well. Would you agree that you are a risk taker?
So I've given this a lot of thought, because my natural gut reaction, I would say that I was risk averse, which is probably contrary when you haven't listened to you just rhyme off all the different career moves that I've made. When I was actually thinking about it more, I am willing to take risk if it's the outcome that I want to achieve, and that where the risk of not doing it is greater. So I guess it's calculated risk. So in terms of going and working abroad, it was very much actually, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I just done it. I didn't give it any thought. I didn't give the downsides any thought, because doing that was going to achieve what I wanted. Okay,
so something that you want, you think it's a risk worth taking.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess what I was thinking about was how my current boss would probably view me, because I think he would potentially say that I was risk averse.
Right, okay.
But again, and I think that comes from, in business, really wanting to understand why we're making a decision, getting the full information, and then making an informed decision. So I'm about taking it informed and calculated risk, I think.
Okay, no, that's really helpful, because I think some people struggle to know, should I do this or not? But you're saying, maybe your advice is, well, you need to know in yourself if it's something you really want to do, and therefore it's got to be worth doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you know what it is that you're trying to achieve, then you're able to say, well, actually, making this move or making this decision will then help me achieve that. Obviously, sometimes there are downsides, but actually, well, is the downside worth it? So, for example, moving abroad, downside, moving away from your family, your friends, kind of starting afresh, trying to build that network. But actually, that experience that you get from doing that, for me, always outweighed that risk. And if it really went horribly wrong, you can come home, and that is what I did.
I was going to ask a bit more on, your overseas experiences. I think, when I used to work in practice and worked in audit, I had some experiences working abroad, but it wasn't secondments. And the perception back then was, if you go on a secondment overseas, that's a good way to accelerate your career, because you'll learn soft skills, so different languages or different cultures. You don't know anyone there, so you've got to build a new network and things like that. And that was quite encouraged by maybe partners in the firm. Would you say that, those were skills that you learned in those experiences? Actually, was it soft skills that you learned?
Yeah, I think it was. Obviously, sort of audit is audit, regardless of country. Maybe got different. It's maybe IFRS compared to UK GAAP, etc. But definitely the soft skills and that ability to adapt and build new relationships, because you are, particularly, I guess, coming from the west coast of Scotland, where you've got quite a strong accent. So it's trying to go to those places and, well, how are you understood? How are you communicating to get your point across? I remember being in a client's office in New York, and I'm just, what are you trying to say to me? And having to just sort
repeat yourself.
Adapt. And I'm quite a fast speaker, so slow down and things like that. And it's just how you handle different. Everyone's different, so actually how you then handle that and manage it. So definitely the soft skills, relationship building, and I think just the experience of something new. I think that only adds to your character.
Yeah, of course. If there was people that didn't want to go abroad, or but they wanted to build on their soft skills, do you think there's something maybe as a substitute to going overseas? If how can someone who's working in maybe a city that they grew up in, they've got a network and things, how can they work on maybe some soft skills that you would learn from going on these overseas secondments?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think it's about how you build up your network and just your relationships, be it in an office that you're currently working on, or if you're going and you're moving jobs. Actually, how do you build that relationship, and how do you listen to people and learn from their experiences? Because I guess going abroad gave me that different experience and gave me that richer view, if you like. But actually, you can get quite a lot of that by actually listening to different people and listening to different people's point of view. It kind of that broadens your mind as well.
So kind of getting out of your comfort zone, maybe even locally networking.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we might come on to talk about this later, but think about mentors and things like that. That is all different viewpoints that you can you just learn from that. It's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy finding out that you're not right, but it all helps.
Mm-hmm. So I was also thinking as well, you've taken those experiences, maybe they weren't seen as risks to yourself. So let's say they're experiences, but you need to have, I guess, something within you, like a drive or ambition to go and do those things. For you, where does that kind of drive and ambition, I guess, or drive, let's say, to come from?
Yeah.
Is it from early on in your career or before that even?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about it, like over the past 6 months actually, am I ambitious? Because again, I think you look at my CV and you would say that I'm quite an ambitious person. Yeah. I don't know if I am naturally ambitious. I don't have this desire to say be CEO. I don't have, I have this next line that I need to get to. But what I do always want to do is I want to make sure that I add value to an organisation and always do my best. And I think a lot of that comes from sort of childhood experiences. So my mum is a single parent and very much had to work. So she's not a sort of professional sort of career woman, but always had to work really hard in order to provide. And it was always, I guess, drummed into us. And we always had that awareness through what she was doing, that ensuring that you've got a job in order to do what you want to do, be it you want to, buy a house, have a nice lifestyle, you've got to make sure that you perform, and the importance around about that to your life and the quality of the life that you have. So I think that's where this desire to always kind of add value, improve myself, it really comes from, because that was, like, I seen that. So regardless of my mum not having a career, in her jobs, that's what she was doing, because that's how you get what you want.
Yeah, so within you is the, I guess, desire to add value, you're saying, and that's kind of what keeps you going. I know you're saying you're maybe not ambitious. Do you see that as the same as being kind of competitive? Because does any of that, it might not be the primary reason, but does any of that give you a thrill? That you succeed, that you progress?
Yeah, I definitely do think you get a thrill from being, actually, I've achieved X, Y, or Z, or you've reached a certain point. I remember getting this role at Social Investment Scotland and thinking, oh God, like, I'm the head of finance. But I wasn't necessarily expecting that in my career. But like I say, I'm not actually a competitive person, but I just want to add value. Like, I'm not the person that's on a sports field that's elbowing the other players out. I'm like, actually, if you want the ball, you have the ball. But in order to be able to continue to add value and sort of work hard is what's important. And I think that's kind of got me where I am today. Yeah,
so your childhood, as a single parent, as a mum, has driven you to have this desire inside of you to add value. So many people, when I talk about motivation, I think, initially we're all motivated by salary, title, etc., etc. There's always things that are motivating us. But then when we get that, we can then maybe not be as motivated because we've got it. So I feel that when people keep succeeding or keep going, they need motivated by things other than things, if you like. So that kind of inner motivation. Like, would you agree with that? You're not doing it for reward, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I would completely agree, because I think if you're fortunate, you get to a certain point in your career and you think, well, actually, I've achieved more than what I kind of ever set out to be. I've got a level of salary or whatever that you're comfortable with, that can provide you with the lifestyle that you want, or provide if you've got family, with your family with the lifestyle that you want. But I think there always has to be something that keeps you going. If not, like, for me, coming in and doing the same job day in, day out for the rest of my life doesn't fill me with excitement. That would actually fill me with dread. So it's actually what keeps me going is just that desire to always learn and develop. So I think as long as the job is challenging you and you get that opportunity to really develop yourself as well, like I think that's invaluable.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in professional services, you know, I mean, I speak to people every day, and, you know, smart people and driven people and people that, you know, not just in audit but other specialisms, you know, they don't want to stand still for too long. They want to be developed, they want to be pushed, and that's just because of like who they are, and they want that, you know, extra experience to keep developing them. Would you say that your past experiences, like in your jobs, has shaped you into who you are for this role as head of finance, or, you know, has it been people, mixture of both? Like, what would you?
Yeah. So I definitely would say that it has shaped me. I think audit and professional services, just kind of as you said, naturally gives people that. Well, audit gives you all that kind of rounded view. You're going out seeing a lot of different organisations. You're thinking about control environments, all that sort of things, which boards naturally love because they want to make sure that the control environment's operating effectively. And I think professional services, there tends to be a certain type of person even in professional services, normally tend to be quite ambitious. They do want to push themselves. And I think that then pushes you to be the best that you can be. So I think that does shape part of you and has probably shaped part of me. I do think the kind of biggest influence as to how I've got here and how I'm able to do my role successfully is the people that I have had, be it as line managers, leaders, mentors, because they have been the ones that have challenged my thinking. I'm quite a strong-minded or stubborn individual, and sometimes I need to get that push and that challenge to say, well, actually, why are you thinking that? Does that actually make sense? If you take a step outside your own world and think about it from someone else's perspective, how does that actually look? Which is a challenge you need when you're actually leading a team. And it's definitely sort of my old boss and a current mentor have definitely done that to me, and their perspective and their value, I think, sometimes could actually outweigh the experience that you get in doing. And
you're quite lucky to have that, you know, leadership, because you're saying that's in your last role. So, you know, maybe it wasn't in the roles before that, and for people, you know, listening to this, they might not feel, I've not got someone, you know, a senior person that's talking to me like that. So would you say that's, I guess, now going forward for your rest of your career, you know, you don't know what that's going to look like, but would that change how you think about where to join, or, you know, whether to stay? You know, basically what I'm saying is it based more on the people you're going to be reporting to in the senior leadership rather than a brand, a name type of thing that maybe a lot of us look for in an original employer because we think that's a good place to go and learn?
Yeah, 100%. I think the people that you're working with, so your peers, and then also the person that you report into and the leader and the leadership of that organisation is probably one of the key things that I look for and will look for going forward, because if you don't have that, for me, it's difficult to see actually how you then are able to deliver the value that you want to bring to the organisation and how you can really achieve that. I maybe arrogantly do think that I can bring a lot of value to an organisation. So I almost feel that if you were working with a leadership team where you weren't able to do that, it's also not fair in the organisation because they're paying for someone who they're not getting the most out of it. So
can you maybe say a bit about moving to SIS? You know, I know that maybe a lot of it was based on the role because it was so different, but did you feel that, you know, the recruitment process and that, you know, you got a good opportunity to meet who you'd be reporting to in enough time? Because I think some interview processes can be too short, some of them can be too long, sometimes you're not meeting the right people. You know, was that experience a good one? And you felt reassured about where you were going?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. So I joined SIS sort of January 2022, so we were still kind of in the throes of COVID and Omicron, I think it was the variant at the time, was out. So my process did start remotely.
Okay.
And we done just a bit of a Teams call and a sort of, chemistry check, for want of a better word. And I knew Alistair, who's the CEO there and who done that first chemistry check, I knew we kind of clicked. And we then went through an in-person interview, which was important because I think in the remote world that we all now live in, we can kind of forget that importance of relationships and actually just the chemistry you get from being face-to-face to someone as opposed to Teams and Zoom is all quite transactional. So done that face-to-face, and then I had another interview with the chair of the board and also Alistair at that point. So I sort of met Alistair 3 times throughout it, and sort of got the sense that we could definitely work together, that I was going to be in a position where I could help influence, over the full organisation and have an input. I am very opinionated, so being able to know that my voice was going to be heard was key.
Great. And going back to your first move to industry, many people in professional services, again, not just audit, but they come to this kind of fork in the road where they consider industry, should I move to industry, should I not? You moved to be financial controller, which sounds great, and from a salmon farm business. Can you tell us a bit about maybe why you decided to make that move then?
Yeah, I got to a point, so I had obviously been in audit my full career, had been abroad, really enjoyed that, moved back and went into audit coming back. Now for me that was kind of the right thing to do, because moving back into audit from being abroad was an easier transition than kind of moving into industry at that point. And then was with the firm for 3.5, up to 4 years, had a great time, felt challenged, I was continuing to learn, and was reaching this point in my career where they were talking about senior manager. And I had that sudden fear, like, oh, this is my career for the rest of my life if I make that move just now. Is that really what I want to do? When you're in professional services, everyone talks about industry. It's like the bright shining lights of industry that you feel that you're missing out on something if you don't try it. So I just felt that was the right time to try it before you kind of progress as senior manager, and then you're then with a certain salary. How does that work to kind of move into industry roles and things like that? So decided that I would try it, to be honest with you. And it was really all because you always think the grass is greener. Yeah.
And so what was your experience from it,
So I was there for, I think, just about a year. My role primarily was focused around about sort of preparing management accounts. It was part of a large overseas group. So there wasn't that much, I guess, financial management, etc. going on in-house. It was very much sort of do the management accounts. It became quite a process-driven part of the role. And I just didn't feel that I was learning or that I was being challenged. I missed that push of audit and professional services. I think you get accustomed to be driven by deadlines and a little bit of pressure, and I kind of discovered that I needed that, and decided that actually that wasn't the right role for me.
Some people stay in professional services, some people, do like you've done and experience industry. And I think whatever you do, you're going to learn if you're, I guess, doing the right thing. Do you look at it as a kind of, or I regret doing that, or you look at it as, no, it's good to try it and I knew more about myself because of it? Or
100%. I firmly live my life that you should not have any regrets. I feel that, life, we're here to live it and we're here to enjoy it. So try, which is maybe why I'm now a calculated risk taker. Try these things, and actually, they don't work out, but you learn something from it. Most experiences you do learn something from, even if you learn what you don't like,
Yeah.
and then you've gained from that.
Yeah. And you were just saying, in audit professional services, there's that push to keep developing, and deadlines and things, there's a bit of pressure to keep you going, and so you're not maybe just sitting comfortably or whatever. So thinking about kind of continuous professional development in your career, but not CPD, like having to go to a seminar or watch a webinar. How do you think you've developed yourself professionally? Has it been from these people pushing you and saying, do this, you should do that, or you should do this? Has it been moving jobs? Has it been progressing, being promoted or something else? How have you developed yourself professionally over the years?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of things that spring to mind, kind of out with the go on your kind of technical audit courses or whatever. Definitely having a mentor. And like I say, just from that different perspective, I think that it probably has been the biggest influence in my professional development. This sounds really, really cheesy, but listen to podcasts. So very much.
Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. Especially ones related to financial services, professional services. So like the high performance podcasts and things like that are all really, you get, again, it's that different perspective. You learn how other people are dealing with certain scenarios.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, actually that's happening to me. Maybe I could do this differently, or how to kind of push that needle. So I would say those couple of things. The other thing that also springs to my mind is actually just getting involved with different things. So I sit on ICAS members board, I'm a non-exec, and actually just being part of different organisations, again, hearing different perspectives, understanding the wider challenges that go on, is also key. It's that kind of just broader view.
Yeah. What point in your career do you think you started to be challenged to maybe broaden, your experiences, or maybe you just thought it yourself? Because I think, I used to work in audit as well. I think you can, the year can just fly by and you've done audits because it's such a demanding job. What point did you get to, was it manager, senior manager, director, where you started to do other things to develop yourself?
Yeah, I would say it's probably once I got to senior manager, to be honest with you, because I think up until that point I was probably going through the cycle. As you're saying, I was probably churning out audits, and at the time I think I was doing a good job, and I've never got any feedback that's just to be clear that I wasn't doing a good job. But I look back now and say, was I actually doing the best that I could have done, because I didn't yet have that wider perspective, if that makes sense. So when I got to senior manager, I got a new line manager, a new boss, who just thought a wee bit differently and was more challenging of me in terms of his expectations, and pushed me into thinking a different way and kind of starting to think more about the bigger picture and actually how to engage wider teams and things like that. All the softer skills that actually when you're going through, you kind of get quite focused on, I just need to get this audit done. As opposed to actually thinking about all the different parts of your role. What
from that advice or those kind of directions that you were pushed in, would you advise people listening to this to maybe work on as soon as they can, maybe in their career, to be an effective leader when they get there?
Think about the impact that you have on people and also seeing their perspective. So it's like I said, I'm very, can be very single-minded, quite stubborn in terms of thinking this is the right way to go. I don't know why we're not all going this direction. But actually quite often there's reasons. 9 times out of 10 people aren't trying to block you just for the sheer hell of it. There's actually a reason as to why they're doing that, and if you take a bit of time to understand that, then you can still achieve what you want to achieve without railroading it through.
And is understanding that possible blocker, which isn't a blocker, how do you understand that? Is it just talking to that person more, asking questions?
It's through conversation. I think first of all you need to build the relationship, because if you don't have relationships there to start with, then you don't have that trust that people aren't bought into you. So having those relationships and then being able to have that conversation, but not a defensive or an attack type of conversation, but actually, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve. Like, what are your concerns about this? Rather than getting frustrated that actually you feel that someone's putting up a blocker when actually that's not what's happening. They actually have genuine concerns that if you just talk and communicate, you can work it through.
Can you think about maybe times in the past before you were, you had the line managers helped you and all this, where you thought, oh, if I'd just known what I know now, that situation would have been much better? Or
I think about there's so many situations, and it's funny. Sometimes I see people acting, and let's be clear, I'm not perfect. Do you know, I'm like still human, and I still don't always handle situations as I would perfectly like to. But I see some situations, and I think, oh, I would have handled it like that, but that's, and I know now my reaction to it, my kind of personal reaction, and I think, well, that's how other people were reacting when I was trying to do that. So I would have handled a number of situations differently. But then I can feel quite fortunate that actually I've been able to have that experience and those and people challenging me, and I know I keep on saying challenging different perspectives, but it's just so invaluable. And I think we can, either as leaders or managers and also as sort of members of the team, you can really underplay that, because you think, oh, that's quite difficult. People don't want that. They don't want to listen to me. They don't want to talk about it. But actually, people 9 times out of 10, people do.
One thing that I feel that people maybe don't get help on from senior leaders is how to manage the balance between their work and their life, and in some ways rightly so. I mean, we're all in charge of our own lives and things. On this podcast series, usually talk to people about work and life balance, because we know professional services is it's very enjoyable in lots of ways and challenges you, but it's also demanding in profession as well at times. So I guess focusing on work and life balance, maybe starting off with, what is that to you? When you look to define work and life balance, kind of what do you think about with that?
So I think flexibility is what sort of work-life balance is about. I think quite often we can get caught up in this idea that work-life balance is like that it's perfectly equal. But in my mind, it isn't. So you might have times, so if you're working in professional services, you might be going through your audit busy season, and your work-life balance is not it's not going to be there. And I appreciate just now professional services, there's obviously challenges in terms of resourcing and things like that, but there should be a point where during your quiet season you're then able to obtain more of that balance. So I think when I worked in New York, their busy season was very much sort of December to April. So you worked really hard during that time, but then you were able to get that flexibility after that point in time. I think if you work in industry, you've got your quarter end, your month ends, which are really intense periods, but in your middle, it's quieter. So you might finish at 3 o'clock rather than 5 or whatever, to do what you need to do. And for me, as long as I can do my job, add the value and perform, but also have the time to go into the gym is important to me, do my non-exec roles, spend time with family and friends, as long as I can make that happen. So it might be that, so I was actually doing some work from a non-exec role on Friday afternoon, so I kind of finished work early, but then I started, during the weeks at 7, I was like, I actually need to finish this stuff. This is important. So it's having that flexibility in order so that you can fit in what you want to fit in. Yeah,
having that perspective, isn't it? I think if you are, yes, there's going to be really busy times in your job, whether you're in industry or in professional services, but you can't let it kind of consume your life as such. Like you're saying, see your family, see your friends, get to the gym, do exercise. You have got time for those things, and if you, I guess your employers want you to do something other than work. They know it's a busy time, but do something other than work, because that's going to help you perform well and keep you in the right kind of state mentally as well.
Yeah, exactly. I always have this, it's never like a rule that I've kind of said out loud, but in my mind I always thought I cannot work past 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
Even that was like studying or anything, because I was like, you get to a point that actually you're not productive anymore. And I think it's easy to be in that cycle and lose that perspective. But actually taking that step away and doing something else, you actually end up gaining more in the long term. I appreciate it's easy for me to sit here and say, but yeah, that's what kind of works for me. And I think it's just knowing your like kind of non-negotiables. Like actually it's non-negotiable for me that I go to the gym, and actually I'm probably a better person for going to the gym.
Is that something you've done from early on, or has it been I won't work weekends or evenings or past 9 o'clock maybe type
thing? So the kind of 9 o'clock thing has always been quite firm in my mind, because I'm an early riser as opposed to a night owl. I would say I've definitely got better with almost these are my non-negotiables as I have got more advanced in my career, and it is maybe easier to do that. But I would definitely encourage people to think about, actually these are the 3 things that I know I have to do. And sometimes actually the work thing is the biggest priority, because you've got an audit to sign off, or you've got an investor presentation, and that's fine, and that just has to be a priority. But it means the next week, once that audit is signed off, or once that investor presentation is done, can say, no, actually this is really important to me, and this is what I need to do. Yeah.
And just before that as well, you were talking about, senior people that have helped you in your career, and maybe they were kind of mentors. Would there be anything you would kind of copy from them, and if you were to be a mentor, or maybe you are a mentor, or...
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd class myself officially as a mentor, but there's a couple of people that I used to work with that definitely try and help and shape them. There's loads of things from my mentor that I do copy. I actually challenge myself sometimes. I think, what would he say to me in this situation? And a lot of my biggest learning is there's a lot of things that you are in control of. You can quite easily say, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. He's been unreasonable, or whatever it might be. But actually it's like, well, okay, what can I do to move this forward? And as long as I'm comfortable that I'm doing everything that I can be, then you can be okay with the situation.
Do you think having an effective mentor requires you to have somebody that's quite like different in personality, maybe character, personality, or someone that's like you?
I think so. There's some ways that I would say that my mentor and I are quite similar, but he's got obviously a lot more experience and probably approaches things in a lot more reasonable way than me. So I think there has to be some differences in order to complement what it is that you're trying to achieve. Because if you were the same, there's the risk that you might be saying, oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. Why was he behaving like that? Yeah, you should go and sort it out. When that's not necessarily effective.
No, that's really helpful. I think that a lot of people do think about how do I develop, how do I learn from senior people, and I think a lot of what you said is, get out your comfort zone, network, even just ask people, put your hand up, that you want to learn about whatever else, and also for senior people maybe listening to this who aren't mentors, I think what you're talking about would encourage them to think about those that report to them and think, could I challenge them, push them in a different way, and that's maybe a relationship we'll have for a while.
Yeah, and it's so invaluable, because I just think if you're a mentor, like, what better way to be able to reflect on your career and say that you've had a significant positive impact on someone else's career. So I think all senior leaders should be really thinking about that, because they're all working with people. They're all wanting to develop a team, and actually, if you're challenging them, then
and you'll keep them probably, more better attrition ratios if people are feeling like they're being challenged and developing where they are.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a key thing. And like I say, I just think what what will you lose from that?
Yeah.
I think there's only plus side
Yeah,
in my mind.
No, absolutely. And you did touch on the non-exec roles, and I don't think I actually mentioned that at the beginning in the summary of your career. So can you tell us a bit more about that? So what are you a non-exec for, and tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm a non-exec at the Ayrshire Hospice, which is obviously a hospice in Ayrshire. So I kind of got involved with that just at the start of this year, actually. So I was always keen in a non-exec role because I think, it's just your opportunity to give back. Quite often they're looking for finance people to become involved so you can get to use your skills for, I guess, greater good. And then again, it's also a great experience and a great learning experience because you're operating with people from totally different sectors sometimes, totally different skill sets, and also in terms of thinking about governance and challenging, and it gets you outside. So I obviously work in a kind of very operational role. For me, it forces me to think about more that bigger picture and that oversight role, which again helps with my day job because I'm sort of thinking, well, if I was sitting on the board of the hospice, this is what I'd be asking if I was presenting the information that I'm about to present to the board at SIS. So it's usually invaluable. I'd done a few kind of smaller charities as a non-exec direct, but I was really looking for a more kind of a bigger, more established charity, and the Ayrshire Hospital really does phenomenal work. So it's...
Did you kind of seek out a position with a charity? Kind of what would your... And a second question here, what would your advice be to people looking for the first non-exec role?
Yeah, so I did kind of early on in my career seek out some non-exec roles for smaller charities, and that was really just using sort of volunteer websites because quite often they are advertised on there.
Good tip.
I probably was getting to a stage where I felt that I probably wasn't the right person, the right skill set for them because they were looking for kind of more operational people. Whereas I wanted to more really be on that step back view. And the hospice has always been obviously from Ayrshire, so it's always been quite a big charity locally, and had seen that they had been advertising for trustees maybe the year before, and I just moved into my role at SIS, felt that it wasn't the right time. But then I seen sort of at the start of the year and it was actually on LinkedIn, I seen they had shared an ad or someone had liked an ad and things like that. So quite often on LinkedIn you don't necessarily feel that it's powerful if you're not getting anything from it, but actually that was where I seen it. So definitely worth it.
And you're saying, I guess, or you said before, what you learned from it was the governance side in terms of maybe challenging people as well. Is that the most you've learned from it? Is there anything else you want to highlight?
So I think so I'm obviously still quite new at it, but I would say that the oversight and the governance perspective, and again, and I keep coming back to this, but see like the relationship piece, because ultimately the only way people are going to move or things are going to move forward is if you have the relationships there to build it and to help them. So I'd say also that actually how am I then building effective relationships with a new board and also another kind of exec team, which is key. Whereas before I would just have went in and said, oh, let's do X, Y, Z, and that's not effective.
So you think you'll look to do more non-exec roles if time allows?
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I think in the future it would be definitely something that I would like to continue with. I think the challenge is obviously kind of still working full time and things like that. It's how you balance it all to still be able to retain all the things that I want to do to maintain that sort of work-life balance. I think there's some things that you have to say no to, but definitely would be something I'll be doing in the future.
Great. Well, no, it's been really interesting talking to you about your career. So many different experiences that you've learned from that hopefully listeners and viewers will take a lot of insight from. And I like to finish up these podcasts with a question, which is just, can you give us a personal goal that you have over the next 12 months? And that can be something in your kind of personal life, or it's personal but in your professional life?
Good question. So, do you know, see, just to continue, I know I keep saying that, see, just to continue to learn, I always think if I get to the end of the year and I can look back and think, do you know, we've achieved what we wanted to achieve and I've learned something along the way, then I can be pretty happy with it. I don't have this big overarching goal that, I want to get to CEO and I want to do this. I just think as long as I can continue to learn, I'd say that's important in my professional life. In my personal life, I just want to continue to have fun, to be honest with you. Go on holidays, spend time with people that you love, and just, enjoy life.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Professional Speaks podcast. Remember, you can watch the episode recording on our YouTube channel, and if you can, please do subscribe and share with all of your friends. The more people who listen to this, the more guests we can have on to share, so that you can learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what you want to achieve in your career. Please also contact me if you have any feedback on this episode. I'd love to hear from you.